It is high noon by my clock here in North Carolina, so I'm going to get the show started. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Suzanne Dayne, Director of Institutional Advancement at the UNC Nutrition Research Institute. I'm happy to see many of you who have joined us before. I'm looking at the list of attendees, and I'm excited to see that you're back with us, and a warm welcome to all our new friends. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Today's talk is presented by Dr. Rachel Goode. Dr. Goode is an assistant professor at the School of Social Work and an adjunct assistant professor in the Center for Eating Disorder Excellence at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And currently, she's a visiting fellow at the Nutrition Research Institute. She received her Ph.D., MPH, and MSW from the University of Pittsburgh. Her research interests include developing, implementing, and evaluating equitable and community-engaged interventions to treat obesity and eating disorders. Her research has been funded by the National Institutes of Health, National Eating Disorders Association, McGee Women's Research Institute, and the University Research Council at UNC Chapel Hill. Currently, Dr. Goode is the principal investigator of an NIH Career Development Award to develop a culturally relevant digital health tool to treat binge eating and obesity. Additionally, she's a licensed clinical social worker and has practice experience with the treatment of eating disorders and obesity among clients in university counseling centers and community-based mental health agencies. She's been fortunate to be the recipient of various awards, including the Oprah Civic Leadership Award, the National Health, Lung, and Blood Institute Research Service Award, and the Outstanding Dissertation Award from the Society of Behavioral Medicine. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Dr. Goode. Dr. Goode, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Suzanne. Wow, that was a great welcome. I look forward to meeting this person. It's great to be with you all today. I'm excited for our presentation, talking about eating behaviors and strategies that can help us all with a challenge that for many of us being in this country has just been part of our journeys. So just looking forward to sharing with you things that I have learned. So just a heads up, I have allowed the subtitles just to make this presentation more accessible to individuals who might need it. And so I am excited. So I thought we would start with a couple, just to give you an overview of what to expect today. So first, I'm just going to introduce a little bit more about who I am, and then we're going to review kind of where we are now, right, with our culture of obesity and common solutions that many of us have heard of, and then introduce maybe a different perspective, some of the principles of intuitive eating and what we have learned in some of our research studies and how this may be helpful. And then I'll end the presentation by just being real practical and giving you all some strategies that you might be able to incorporate in your current eating behaviors, things that might be helpful to get you on this road if you are not currently. So I am the principal investigator, the director of my lab is called the Living Free Research Lab, and our focus has largely been on two areas: interventions to treat binge eating and interventions to treat obesity. And so we have spent a great deal of time looking at populations who have been largely underserved in many of our current research studies. So many of my studies focus on African Americans, individuals who are currently experiencing poverty. And so we're just trying to uncover interventions and programs that would help improve some of the mechanisms behind eating for these populations. So I always think it's important. No one does this alone, right? So on the left is my family, and then on the right are members of some of the students that I have been blessed to work with at UNC Chapel Hill. And so I know that both of these groups, my research team and my family, really hold me up and allow me to be able to kind of solve some of these issues. So I'm so grateful for them. I also am fortunate to be a key content expert with the Center for Excellence in Eating Disorders. And so this unique nexus, I think, of my work being at the intersection of both eating disorders and obesity, I think has provided me a lens that is helpful and might be helpful as we move forward in this discussion. You know, obesity And the problem of obesity has been with our country for, more than 30 years now. And so we need fresh solutions, just different perspectives and different ways. And so I'm excited because I think the place where I sit allows me to be able to do this. So these are just a couple of my research projects that I've been working on my lab. And so as Suzanne introduced, I am kind of trying to come up with a program to digitally treat binge eating and obesity. So recognizing the impact of COVID-19, we do a lot more things on the computer than we used to. And so a lot of my projects have been really focused on how can we create a digital experience, right, that is, I don't know, just more acceptable and might meet more people who maybe have been underserved in previous research studies. I also am looking at type 2 diabetes and interventions to help improve access to treatment and care for type 2 diabetes. And then finally, this last study is one that you might be able to be a part of. So I'll talk more about it in detail at the end of this presentation. But in short, we are testing a program to help people improve their ability to listen to their biological signals of hunger and fullness and see how that might help with weight maintenance. So as we have all heard so many times, I know you all can think of different newspaper articles, stories. We hear all the time how obesity is a health crisis and we have got to do something about this excess weight. And so the challenge in responding to this is that we've gotten a lot of mixed messages. And unfortunately, all of us probably at one time or another, I think it's a developmental trajectory almost, to come to a place where you're going to ask yourself, what do I do about my weight? Whether I want to lose more weight or change my body, but these are questions that are really just a part of our culture. That's just something that a lot of people find a place of struggle. It's a very difficult place to be. And another challenge is that there's a lot of pressure all around us. These are just a couple magazine articles that I know all of us have seen where we're in the grocery store aisle or we are watching commercials on television, this pressure to diet. And one thing we know about diets, they do one thing really, really well. They help us disconnect with our internal signals of hunger and satiety, and they usually set us up to regain the weight at a later time. So another problem is that our food environment works against us. So on one hand, we are encouraged to lose weight, we're encouraged to exercise, but then the very next breath, there are commercials, there are advertisements, there are restaurants all around us that are encouraging us to eat this really tasty food that is going to work against those goals. And so many of us, I literally feel like our relationship with obesity and type 2 diabetes and a lot of our chronic conditions are like driving on a road and trying to avoid potholes. There are many potholes. And so ultimately the answer would be to change our environment. But unfortunately, that has not been something that we've been able to do yet. So we take matters in our own hands. And often many of us get into this pattern of yo-yo dieting. So I thought this image was really helpful just to explain what happens to many of us as we often, the first step you think, when I have excess weight to lose, I'm going to get on a diet. And so we start, excited, we're going to begin this diet. And we're hopeful, right? We're hopeful at this change. I can do this. This is not going to be so bad. Cabbage soup and, carrots, that's going to be okay. I can do it. And so, but what we're not realizing is that our bodies had a different opinion, right? They have a different perspective. And so at first it's working, right? We are losing weight. We're excited. But then there's often this period of deprivation that sets in. And so when we feel deprived, it's like a rubber band effect. Our bodies literally kind of swing the other way. And eventually you can only take the deprivation so long. And so the cravings and the hunger, it just becomes unbearable. And what you do is you start overeating or reintroducing the foods that you normally didn't eat. And you usually eat larger quantities than you would have normally because you are feeling deprived. And then you end up gaining all the weight you lost plus more. And so many of us have experienced this, have had their chance, and it's exhausting. Not only physically, it's exhausting, emotionally, it's exhausting, and it can really wear on your spirit, just knowing that you are going back and forth. And so I usually poll when people begin my studies, I often ask them how many times they have engaged in weight loss attempts. And it is not uncommon for there to be at least 3 times because it's just something that all of us, are trying to make decisions about. And there's a lot of bad advice that's easily accessible. And so I think I know it's caused myself, it's caused other researchers, clinicians to want us to consider, is there another way? Might there be an alternative to this yo-yo, this cycle, this back and forth? Could we do things differently? And the answer to that question, which again, I have seen in the research and I've seen in my studies, and I have seen in many of the people that I get the chance to serve, both clinically and in my research, yes, there is another way. And we're going to go through what we know about intuitive eating and, provide you all some new strategies. So just to bring everyone on the same page, intuitive eating starts with a very different frame. So where many traditional behavioral interventions encourage you to make different behavioral interventions for obesity, you are encouraged to restrict your calorie intake and encouraged to monitor your fat grams and to count externally. Intuitive eating is the opposite, and they start to bring into the center your body and your body's experience and your body's signals, right? And so the first thing that if you're going to practice intuitive eating, you're going to give yourself unconditional permission to eat. And usually that is one of the hardest parts because again, if you have been involved in the diet roundabout, there are certain foods that are bad and certain foods that are good. And so immediately those constructs are in our minds. And so when we are intuitive eating, it's important that the permission is there. And I think people feel like, well, if I give myself the permission, I'm going to eat everything. And funny or not, that doesn't actually happen because you have permission. And the problem is a lot of us haven't had permission, and that deprivation, it's like a kid at a candy store. You tell them, no, you can't have the candy. All they think about is the candy. And so that's kind of how our bodies respond when we deprive them of foods that we enjoy. But it takes practice to get there. It also encourages a healthy relationship with food and your body. I know for some of us, it's hard to imagine not being at an adversarial relationship with food, right? Coming to peace with your relationship, but that is possible. And we'll see in upcoming slides. And then it helps you reconnect to your body's internal signals of hunger and satiety. Our bodies have these amazing cues that if we listen again, help to regulate body weight. We have seen that. And so, but it's hard to listen. And then we learn to eat for physical rather than emotional reasons. And many of us have a lot of reasons why we eat, and being hungry is maybe just one of those reasons. So I thought it'd be helpful to go through, I think, one of the most famous research studies that looked at examining, okay, what if we take participants through a study where they kind of practice this intuitive eating, and then we compare it to our traditional path where people, were gonna go on a diet, and see how these individuals respond to a different, respond in various outcomes. So Linda Bacon, who now goes by Lindo Bacon, designed this study where it was comprised of predominantly white women with obesity, about almost 80 participants, and they were randomized to 2 different groups. One was a health at every size group, and the other was a diet group. And so the health at every size group, the intervention was focused on helping people accept their bodies, helping people recognize and kind of have a gentle approach to nutrition and make changes that are correspond with how their body feels, and things that would help, just kind of bring their body to ultimate health, a different perspective, help them learn and eat according to their biological signals of hunger and satiety, participate in physical activity, but in a joyful way, right? For things you just enjoy doing, you like doing. And then they gave them good social support. They were in a group together, and they were able to, just kind of rely on one another to help get them through this period. So the diet group, in contrast, they received a lot of the guidance that I think for many years was very common in behavioral treatments for obesity, to, count their calories, restrict their energy and fat intake, They used a food diary to write down everything that they ate. They were encouraged to do a certain amount of physical activity. And then they had sessions that covered various topics, including, counting fat grams, going to the grocery store, and understanding food labels. And so the study was for 1 year in total. And so there were 6 months where the participants attended 24 weekly sessions. So, and then in person, this is 2005. So they came in person, 6 to 24 weekly sessions. And then there was a part of the study where it was kind of like an aftercare part to kind of support participants as they were reintegrating out of those weekly sessions back into their daily life. And so participants were asked to come back in to be evaluated at 12 weeks. So that is about, halfway, through the study, 26 weeks, 52 weeks at the end of the study, and then another year later at 104 weeks. So in total, these participants were followed for 2 years. So what we learned just with the study outcomes, when we compare the two groups, the health at every size group, remember, they were the ones that were practicing learning to listen to their bodies, right? Learning to listen to their appetites. We see there was an initial increase, this is a typo, increase in cholesterol, but there was a decline at follow-up. In the diet group, there was no significant change in cholesterol, total cholesterol. And then there was a significant decrease in systolic blood pressure sustained at follow-up. Same thing with the diet group, but it was not sustained at follow-up. So that probably meant that their diet reverted back to maybe some of the things that they were used to eating, just that pattern that we talked about before. And then the time that was spent in moderate, vigorous activity, physical activity, it significantly increased. But again, in the diet group, it increased significantly, but it wasn't sustained at follow-up. And then the health at every size group, they didn't have a significant change in their weight. In fact, they maintained their weight pretty steady through, baseline all the way up for 2 years. And so what happened in the diet group is they lost about 5% of their initial weight. But by the end of the study, there was no significant difference between their baseline weight and then their follow-up weight. And again, that largely follows the pattern. And so what we can take from this is that there is some preliminary evidence to allow us to consider that there might be a different way for us to manage our eating behaviors, manage our weight in a way that helps us to kind of level out and to be sustained and to not go up and down and weight cycle so much that we find that may often happen when we engage in dieting. So there's also a review paper also looked at some other benefits, right, of intuitive eating. Individuals who ate in this way were less likely to have eating disorders. They were less likely to chronically diet. They weighed less, and they were able to maintain their current weight, just what we saw in that previous study. They lowered cholesterol, lowered blood pressure, increased their self-esteem, and reduced their body's dissatisfaction. Now, I don't know about you, but if there was a way for me to find, just kind of a peaceful place, right, in this journey, which can be so very not peaceful for so many of us, it seems like there's evidence to suggest that there might be some value in really learning to listen to your biological signals of hunger and fullness and let that be a major factor in how you eat and your current eating behaviors. So before we go any further, I thought we would take a poll. So we're going to give you all a poll and just kind of answer honestly to kind of see where we are now. So I know how to customize the rest of the presentation so you all get the most out of it. Okay, so we can go ahead and launch that poll. All right, almost everybody has participated. I'll wait just a few more moments for just a few more people to fill out the survey. Okay, I'm going to share the results so we can all see. All right, so it looks like on average, for most of us, we eat, about largely most people in this family eat about 3 to 5 times a day. And so that shows that most of you are regular eaters engaging in regular eating behaviors. And so we see, and this is really normal, right? This number 2, how many of those times are because you're actually biologically hungry? And so we have most and some, and I think that really is honest reflection of our eating patterns. Let me scroll down. And then how confident do you feel in your ability to recognize your hunger cues? And it seemed like most of us were in the middle here. So slightly confident, fairly confident. So yay for my people who are fairly confident. And I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you might be a little bit, you might have switched up. Everyone's getting closer to that very confident. And for those in the not confident at all, that's okay. We're gonna hopefully help you to get a little closer. And then how frequently do you stop eating when you are full? Okay, I get most and some of the time. That too, I think that is a good reflection of kind of where we're at in our country and what our norms are in our country. And so we'll go over that in detail. Okay, so thank you all so much for participating in this poll. All right, so let's continue. So today I am going to do a couple things when we talk about just different ways so that you all can begin to improve your ability to listen to your biological signals of hunger and satiety and to help you go through this process. And so I show this program. It's called Appetite Awareness Training. You all can go and buy this book right now. Her name was Linda Craighead. She was one of my mentors when I was in school and I was learning the principles of this program. One thing I love about Appetite Awareness Training is it gives you a strategy and tools to kind of help you. They call it self-monitor. The reason why you're asked to, in typical behavioral treatments for most things, you're asked to self-monitor your behavior. So kind of watch yourself and track how you're doing. And so the difference though in appetite awareness training is you're not tracking what you're eating, but you're tracking your eating episodes. And so self-monitoring is a great tool, right? Because you get the chance to watch yourself and learn from your behavior and to reflect on it. And, every week you get better and you get stronger. And so this is the treatment that I have used kind of as a base and built off of it for many of my research studies, because I found that it has a lot of good tools to help people really learn how to do this, right? It's one thing to say it in theory, but it's another thing to go from not doing it all to transition to doing it. And so we are going to, so I'm going to talk about several things that are from this program that might be helpful for you as you move forward. So when you think about, I think we're appetite awareness training, and you'll see AAT, that's appetite awareness training for short, where you will see appetite awareness training really kind of focus. Typically in many of our treatments for obesity, we are focused on the diet and the physical activity. And so I know you all can probably just rattle off different times, or maybe you have gone for treatment for, weight. And so you know that the nutritionist or the program is, they're really just kind of taking the time to examine diet and physical activity. And so we are going to, appetite awareness training really helps to look at the base, right? And look at the eating behaviors. Instead of focusing on the what and the how much exercise you get, we're going to just start with helping you focus on the how of eating, which is a huge part of your eating journey. It's just how you make your decisions about when you eat, why you eat. We often don't spend enough time thinking about that, and that deserves attention. And so I think the best way for us to think about what we're going to be learning is to think about a baby. So I have a 2-year-old, and I know many of you are parents and remember seeing your children when they were very, very young. Now you have to remember when they were babies. what happens, a baby, you think about how a baby eats. When the baby is hungry, physically hungry, the baby will cry, right? And you will feed the child. But when the baby has had enough food, often you cannot get any more food in that child. They turn their head, they fuss, but they don't want to eat anymore. That's how we come out, right? That's how we start our journey. But often, for two reasons, you were usually socialized out of it, right? The parents start getting involved, and you parents, I'm a parent too, so I know what happens, but you start looking at what your child is eating, and you start having opinions about how much they're eating and encouraging them to continue to eat. Oh, a child says, I don't want any more food. Oh, you need to eat. Again, these are things that we have been socialized into, and we socialize our children into. And this is kind of the beginning stages where we really just almost begin to kind of help them separate from what their body is saying and what they do with their eating behaviors. And so as we go through that process, and you watch as you're growing up, you see what others in your family are eating, you see what's served to you at restaurants, and you get cues about how much food you should be eating and the types of foods that you enjoy eating. And so these cues stick with us, and they really shape our eating decisions. And so to really kind of take hold of this, we have to remember we were born knowing how to eat, and we unlearned it because of many different factors. And so we have to kind of go back to some of those cues that are already in our bodies and are ready for us to listen to them again. So this model, and I'm going to break it down. So I know there's a lot on this screen, but I'm going to break it down because I think it's important for us to think about the factors that affect our eating behaviors, right? And there are different paths that many of us are on, okay? And I think it's important for us to kind of break it down and think about these paths. So this gray circle in the middle, this is where, let's say we're here. So all of us are in this box, and we've gotten to this box from several different pathways when we begin our eating episodes. So for some of us, we are here because we, in this blue path, we emotionally eat, okay? And so this is very, very common. A lot of people, I think, struggle with emotional eating. And so you eat because you're either trying to reduce negative emotions, or you are celebrating, you have some positive feeling, something great is going on. In many cultures, this is very common to emotionally eat, definitely in American culture. And so often when we emotionally eat, that means we may or may not have actually been physically hungry. And so as we continue on this path, we often get to a place where we either ignore fullness, right? This normalized overeating path where we just continue and we keep going. Or let's say we were on a diet and we break some of our rules, then sometimes that can lead to, you feeling so discouraged and so bad about yourself. So that might lead to a binge eating episode, right? Where you just say, forget it, I'm going to eat whatever way I want to eat. And maybe I'll try again tomorrow. Then for some of us in this circle, it's the food available box. You go to the office functions, you go places and people offer you food to eat that you weren't planning on eating or you're not hungry for, but it's just there. It's there. You go to social events, it's there. And so often for many of us, we start an eating episode because the food is available. Okay. And so we may or may not be physically hungry. And so we may also get on the same path of ignoring our fullness, not being aware, especially the TV's on. It's very hard to focus on eating and watching television at the same time. And so that too might lead us on a path where we get into normalized overeating because we weren't really maybe hungry to begin with. So we're, kind of setting ourselves up. Then I'm going to skip over this green one because we'll come back to that. Then this too hungry path. And that's for some of us who either aren't eating enough. So some of us don't do that good at eating regularly throughout the day. And when your body is too hungry to eat, it makes it very, very challenging to regulate the amount of food that you eat or you might be you might be trying to diet. So that might lead you to be too hungry. Or you might be, trying to struggling to eat enough, right? Struggling with some disordered eating. So you're struggling to eat enough. And then, when you do eat, there are all these rules that are just in your mind. And it just might make you feel like you just got to restrict your eating and make it really challenging. And so then this green, and this is the place where I feel like all our models, the goal is to get back here where we eat. And you think about people in your life who, don't have any food issues, that might not appear to have any food concerns. When we think about those individuals, right, and we think about just kind of some of the things that they tend to not, it's not a big deal, right? I have people like that in my life. It's not a big deal to them. They just eat when they're hungry and they stop when they had enough. And so the goal is, this program is really just trying to get all of us from whatever path that we're on to get back where food is literally an answer to a biological concern. Not to say there won't be other reasons that you eat, and we'll help you prepare you for that. But most of the time, your eating is going to be based on your biological signals of hunger and satiety. And then when you eat, you're going to stay aware, right? And you're going to stop eating and focus at moderate fullness and end. And that takes practice. And so that's something that's worth, though, taking the practice to learn how to do. So I think one of the challenges for so many of us is that we have, Linda Craighead, she calls these your two tanks. We have our psychological tank, tank P for short. And that's the place where, we need to fill ourselves with things that nourish us, our spirit, our emotional needs. And then we have our tank B, like our biological tank, where we need to nourish our physical body. And so food truly is only the answer to this tank B. But it is much easier to try to fill tank P with food, right? It's very easy when, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed. It can be easy to turn to food in this way, right? To turn and to eat. But the hard part is that food wasn't really meant to nourish that part of yourself. So it might maybe help you temporarily, but more often than not, you're going to still have that need and not be satisfied. And so that can either lead people to eat more, or it can just leave you wanting at the end. So you've eaten more food than you've actually needed, and then you're still needing more nourishment because you didn't get what you needed at first. So the goal is to help people kind of recognize and kind of really start to enhance their ability to focus on food for tank B, and then to find other things to do for our tank P needs, okay? So I thought it would be helpful for us to just begin to understand the difference between physical hunger and emotional hunger, okay? And so I'm gonna ask you all to participate in the chat, okay? And you all are going to participate, and you are going to just begin to kind of help answer some of these questions, okay? So when we think about physical hunger versus emotional hunger, which one comes on fast and which one might come on slow? Anybody have any thoughts about that? Okay. Elizabeth, I see you. Physical hunger builds slowly. Yes. Judy, I see your hand. I don't know how to help people speak, but Judy, if you want to take yourself on mute and say something, or I don't know if I can do that, how that works. Okay, I see you all participating. Emotional hunger, yes, fast. Like you all are on it, okay? On it. So the answer, yes, emotional hunger comes on suddenly, right? It's quick. Physical hunger comes on gradually. Yeah, Laura, I see you in chat. Emotional hunger feels different. Like I need something, but I don't know what it is. Yes, that's exactly what it is. You just gotta have something. Yeah, you are doing good. Okay, let's go to the next one. Physical hunger versus emotional. Where do you feel it at? Where does it originate? What do you all think? I'll give you all a minute. Where do we feel it? Where does it originate? And I see you all raising your hand, but I'm not sure how to get in touch with you. So you might want to just put it in the chat. So Okay. In your mind, emotional hunger starts in your head. I see, Delisha. Yes. Karen's stomach. What? Physical tummy, Robin says. Less of physical, stomach, emotional, head. Okay. Emotional hunger is in my head. Yes. Christine, wherever stress manifests. I love you all in the chat. This is great. Okay. This is great. So let's see. So physical hunger, usually you feel a sensation of your stomach rumbling and growling, okay, from your stomach. And so if as you start to really get physically hungry, you might notice you feel a little weak, you might be a little lightheaded. We laugh about being hangry. For some of us, this really might be kind of, but you're feeling these physical sensations. But for emotional, in contrast, right? The desire for food is mostly, in your mind and maybe in your mouth where your taste buds are. Okay. So there's a difference between these two, and it can be really confusing. Okay, you all, what about what you want to eat when you're physically hungry versus emotionally hungry? What do you think? What might be some of the differences you see? I see you all sugar, salt, fats. You want sweet, like a hard carb meal. Yes. Okay. Physical, I see protein, greasy French fries. Yeah, I know that's emotional. Okay. Emotional, high calorie, physical, more balanced. Yeah. I love that. Elizabeth, you said emotional, junk food, favorite meals, things that make you feel good. Okay. So you might have a craving when you're emotionally for something specific, right? Something that you just got a taste for, and then physical hungry. The goal is to satisfy hunger. So there might be some flexibility. You do usually, I know I often, when I'm physically hungry, I might have a taste, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling like something. But sometimes I think emotional hunger can be a bit more specific, and things, yeah, foods with meaning, memories. Christine, I see you in the chat. Taisha, I see you, ice cream, those things. Okay, so, I messed up. We're just going to move on. I meant to ask you all this, but you all can add some more in the chat. But what about, some of the characteristics? So you might notice when you're physically hungry, this lightheaded, weakness, tired, low energy, mood changes, like I said before. And so emotional eating, you might not even be tuned in to that it's happening, right? You might be trying to avoid other emotions, other things that you don't want to think about. Often we might, especially when we're really, in a place where we're trying to get this emotional need met, we might eat in isolation. Okay. And then we might be, cued in because food, right, is there. And so we might be feeling bored, lonely, stressed, depressed, or sad. Okay. So last question. What about after you've eaten? So how might be some of the differences between physical hunger and emotional hunger? After the food is done, what might you notice? I see you, Elizabeth. Never satisfied. Yeah, never satisfied from emotional hunger, right? Because the need wasn't really, the food doesn't meet the need. Yeah, after you eat physically, Susan, or Naomi, you eat the right thing, you should feel good. Yeah, I see you all. You all are getting it. You're getting it. I see you all in the chat. Okay. Yeah, Taisha, you feel better. Emotionally, you feel regret. Yeah, it makes you feel guilty if it's linked to bad emotions. Thank you, Delisha. Yeah, Karen, emotional will be hungry again quickly. So you all are seeing and understanding this. Okay. So hunger, if you have a physical sensation of hunger that starts your eating episode, when you've eaten, you usually feel satisfied, right? That usually goes together. You have this desire physically to eat, and then you feel satisfied. And then emotionally, you're just not still searching, right? It didn't quite do it for you because that's not really what you needed. It's not really the answer. Okay. You all, I'm so glad that you all participated. Thank you so much. Okay. So I think it's also important. Some of us get stuck in these patterns of eating, right? There's this grazing, and this is very, very, very common. So you never become overfull because you eat little things throughout the day. And so sometimes some of us are just snackers. So all day we'll be going, snacking on various things, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so that adds up. But what that will do is that prevents your stomach signals from firing regularly, because it's like you're at this, you're not that hungry, but you're not that full. So sometimes when you're in a heavy grazing period, it might be really difficult for you to kind of begin to hear some of these signals. And so some of us haven't really heard some of these signals for quite some time. And that's okay, because you can always learn again. Then for some of us, we might be in this ignoring hunger pattern, right? Where you've gone long periods of time. I think of some of the women in my studies would often tell me, they might go all day and not eat, whether they're working 12-hour shifts, they are, just don't have time. They're either, I remember some of them were nurses or, work housekeeping. They just didn't really have the time available to eat. And so, but at night, when they would, have a little break or get off that job, they would be just almost ravenous, right? Because they've gone so long between eating. And that really creates an opportunity for it's almost like you lose control because your body is just too hungry, and it just makes it really challenging. And then it's binge eating, behavior, or you eat to the point where you just might feel like, I can't eat another bite. And that is a norm, And so either you don't stop when you've had enough, and it's practicing learning to stop at moderate fullness. Okay. So I show this stop sign because I think about how we are with our cars. Now, for most of us, when we see a stop sign, we have learned to stop, right? Because we either going to get an accident, we're going to get a ticket, but whatever the reason, we usually stop. Maybe if we pause, I'll say pause for some of us, we pause. But with our bodies, when the body throws up a stop sign, culturally, I think it's normal for it to be either funny, acceptable. I don't need to listen to that stop sign. And so as part of this treatment, and part as if you're trying to relearn these signals, we gotta reinstate the importance of the stop sign. And that if you continue to pass the stop sign, it desensitizes you, right? You don't even see it anymore. It's like, it's optional. And I don't even notice it. And so we want to notice again, right? Listen again, pay attention again. And as you begin to reinstate the importance of the stop sign, and you start eating when you're moderately hungry, you set your body up to start firing these things normally. Okay. So I want to show you all a couple tools that are going to help you. So right now, you all could download this app on your phone. This is called the Mindful Eating Coach, and we use it in some of our studies. And it is a way for you, and it's built by some of the people who worked with building the appetite awareness training program. So they really work well together, but it helps you practice that self-monitoring so you can begin to look and see how hungry you were before you ate and how full you were after, right? And so the goal we talk about in appetite awareness training, I know you all might see these numbers on the screen. The goal is to be between a 2 and a 3. So like moderately hungry, okay? So this one, you see is red. This one is not the place we're trying to start most of our eating episodes, because it's going to be harder for you to stay in control. And then the goal is the 7, we are trying to avoid that, right? That's when you've gone over. So we're trying to stop between a 5 and a 6. Where's this moderate hunger? So that means for some of us, we got to slow down our eating episodes, right? If we're going to be able to hear again, we got to slow them down. We have to really mindfully kind of engage in our eating episodes. So that means that maybe it won't be helpful for you to eat in front of the TV, eat while you're doing something else, but for a moment while you're trying to get a handle on these signals, to really focus on just the eating part, knowing that you may not be able to have a whole long conversation, and talk, and you just might need to focus on the eating while you're practicing building this. And this program will help you begin to take the steps to do this. Okay. And so this is another tool that we've been building in another one of my interventions, but it gives it in a different way, right? You see the 1 to 7 scale and this green, this mindful eating. That's the goal, right? That you would be tuned in, paying attention to when you start and then when you stop eating, and avoid the poles. We're avoiding the extremes, and we're trying to make sure, we're eating in this middle place and we're stopping in this middle place. Okay. And there's a couple skills. So I'm going to end by giving you all a couple skills that you can use even now. You can begin to use that will help kind of work in conjunction with this appetite awareness training skill. So one is a conscious decision. That means anytime you make a decision to eat, you are paying attention. You're deciding. How sometimes you're just great, you're not paying attention, you're just eating things. But we encourage people to consciously decide to eat and then, engage in, it's called anti-deprivation eating. And I liken this to being, you're at the wedding and there is cake. Okay. One of my team members was talking about this. You go to these weddings and you have eaten a whole meal. So you're not really that hungry at the wedding, but you see the cake and it looks so good. And of course you don't want to disappoint, the party that's getting married. And so you're going to eat some, but maybe you are paying attention differently when you eat, right? And you're realizing as you're taking bite after bite, there's a point when this cake may not taste as good. You may not really desire it anymore. Or you might just eat a little bit so you don't feel deprived, because that's a real thing. When we feel too deprived, we find it hard. We're going to get it somewhere, right? You might not eat the cake, but then you'll try to eat, the thing you were supposed to eat. And eventually you're going to get to the cake after going through all those other things. I know some of us have experienced it, and then rating foods as worth it or not worth it. Recognizing that everything that's in your environment, everything you're being offered, some of that you've had hundreds of times, is it really that, is it worth having it? Again, if you know that it might take you away from the plan that you're trying to eat on, or it's going to take you away from some of the things that you really want to eat later, and it might make you full, and so you start to think a little bit more about evaluating some of your eating episodes like this. And I know when many of my participants, when they learn these skills, it helps empower them to choose, instead of feeling like the food always chooses. And for our culture, it's easy to feel like that. And you can make a choice and have some skills to do that. And so this is something, for example, if you're having an emotional eating moment, this is tank P hunger. If I can't think of an alternative, or if I try several alternatives and still have a strong urge to eat, I will make a conscious decision to choose to self-soothe by eating, but I'm going to eat a moderate amount of something I really want. It can be an effective way to soothe myself until I can figure out a more effective way to manage my feelings. And that's the goal, right? That we would recognize some of us, we may not have any other tools right now. Emotional eating might be our tool, but we're going to take the steps and grow and think of alternatives for urges to eat when not hungry, and these are just different examples, but you could come up with your own list of things and build it. Our toolbox, for some of us, it includes food. That is the toolbox. We are trying to build it up and add more things. And that's going to just take some practice, some things that you can do to begin to help you relearn, right? Something that has been culturally put into us since birth. So this is just the last thing I wanted to show you all, is just this path, how you manage those urges to eat. And so I think of an urge, let's say we start here, and are you hungry, physically hungry? Is it close to your regular snack or mealtime? You get that desire to eat. If yes, eat what you want and stop at moderate fullness, pay attention. But if it's no, think about what triggered your urge, if it was an external, something outside of you. If yes, you're going to rate the intensity of that urge. And if, let's say, you're really, 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 it's a strong urge, it might be best just to eat, and you choose that anti-deprivation eating if you think you might feel deprived, but pay attention, right? And stop when you're moderately full. But let's say you have a more moderate urge or something that's just slight, you might be able to distract yourself, you might be able to just kind of pay attention. We call it urge surfing, right? You just kind of pay attention and watch your urge, and ask yourself, what's going on that I may not want to feel right now? What's bothering me? What feels out of balance in my life? Okay. And just to start to just be in the process a little bit more. Sometimes it's hard for us to sit with discomfort with around food, but it's helpful to break. Some of us have this automatic cue in our brains, it's like the dog salivating. When we have emotional need, we turn to food. And so when you take a minute and maybe go a different way, you might create an alternative pathway. Okay. So I'm excited because I have an opportunity for you all. If you all hear this and you think, oh my goodness, I would like some extra support doing this. We have a research study that's going on right now. We are recruiting right now here at the NRI. And we are looking for individuals who struggle with emotional eating. And, in order to be eligible for the study, you have to be an adult, with a BMI of put you in the overweight or obesity category. You have to be friends with technology. Okay, so you got to have a smartphone. You need to have like a Wi-Fi, be able to have the access to that in your home, report emotional eating, able to attend group meetings via Zoom, and have lost about 5% of your body weight within the last 2 years. Okay. And so if you meet this eligibility criteria, participation would mean you attend 12 classes via Zoom. You self-monitor your appetite through a smartphone app, and then you would receive a Wi-Fi scale and a Fitbit activity tracker. Okay. And so if you all want more information, I know Taisha is on this line. Taisha, can you put in the chat just the link? You can find this information on the NRI website. And you can screen for the study and see if you might be eligible, because right now we are recruiting for this study. Okay. So thank you all so much for this time. I'm trying to think what time it is. There might be a few minutes for questions. So let me stop sharing. I just want to thank my team who has worked so hard and been such a great part of helping us get this far with our research.
Wow, that was really terrific. Thank you, Dr. Goode. Folks, I forgot to mention this at the very start. So although you've all lived on Zoom forever, so you must know this. Here comes a question now. Do you see this, Dr. Goode? Go back to slide. Well, there's lots of them coming in. Can you go back to slide 39? That was a question coming up.
Let me share.
Let's see what you can do, and then I'll read you another one too. Okay. And then the person who was this, there you go. Here's a question for whoever asked for this. We'll leave this up for a minute while we have some other questions. Let's do that. Yeah. Elizabeth asks, how can this approach be combined with traditional nutrition counseling, reading labels, understanding macronutrients and calories, etc.?
Yeah, I love that question, Elizabeth, because I think it looks at the order, right? You do things. And so often for many of us, if we haven't really mastered our ability to listen to our body's signals of hunger, fullness, and really be healthy eaters, healthy with our approach towards food, it's more challenging to then go to the next level, which is what you talked about, the nutritional counseling, because we still have some foundational things that are not in alignment. So what happens is that because we maybe haven't gotten this foundational place, then when we get that advice, for some of us, we kind of go back to maybe some of our old ways because we haven't really understood how we eat and, deprivation. And we have some, some more psychological things that are wrapped up in our eating behavior. So what I have found is that if someone, usually it's helpful to start at this place and to build up your confidence in eating for physical hunger, stopping when you've had enough, and then your ability to kind of do that second phase, which is focusing on your macronutrients, changing some of the nutritional content of your diet. It really makes it, I think, a lot easier to do it. And so I just think this might be the first step for many people, before you're able to succeed at that second place.
Great. I see that the person who asked for slide 38 said it might actually be slide, or 39 said it might be slide 30. So let's.
Was it this one? Is this 38?
Oh, I can't see the number. Yeah, that does say 38 down in the corner.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll leave that up for just a second.
Okay.
Somebody else asked, oh, yes, yes, this is correct.
Okay.
And Brooke has just posted for everybody that this presentation and the slides will be available on our website. So do keep that in mind, and we'll make sure that we send this out to everybody. Another comment or question is, do you have seniors in the study?
Yes, yes, we do. So we go up, I think, to age, either it's 75, and Taisha, you might put this in the chat. I think it's 65 or 75. So yes, we do.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm sorry, it seems this one might not be right for you, but it's 65. But stay tuned because there may be other options. Let's see. I'm not seeing any more questions there. Is there anything else anybody else would like to ask Dr. Goode while we have her? Because this was some amazing information. I'm just checking to see. Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions we have right now, but one more. How can this approach be combined with, didn't we do that? We did that. We just had that. How can this approach be combined with traditional nutrition counseling? We answered that, didn't we? Can you mention more about what the workbook you talked about?
Sure. Yeah, it's called Appetite Awareness Training. And so the book is written, it's originally designed to be tested with individuals who are struggling with eating disorders. So as you read the book, you will see that language, specifically binge eating disorder. And that's one of the reasons why I choose to use it in a lot of my studies, because many people who participate often have some struggles with binge eating. And so that's the lens, but it will provide some of this other background information to help, I think, anyone really begin to transition to developing some of these eating behaviors. It's a self-help workbook, so you can go through it in different stages to help you.
I think there are a couple others that have just come up. Naomi asks, they just keep popping around. So hold on just one second. Did I recall correctly that the intuitive eating study had weight flat across time while the diet group increased weight by the end? If so, are there interventions where people not only maintain weight, but can lose it? Or is maintenance the best that people can hope for?
Naomi, so we don't have a lot of evidence right now where we have seen intuitive eating produce weight loss in the same way that we see it in our other behavioral interventions. But that is part of the reason that we're trying to build the gap, because we need to learn more, right? And so I do think that starting from this place, I think you can lose weight. And I think it might require, as again, you think you're building layers upon it. I think learning to listen to your body is a fundamental skill, and building on that will only benefit you. And so, you think about some of the things that factor how we lose weight: hormones, you think about the certain type of foods we're eating, may just affect certain things, physical activity. There's certain variables that when manipulated, I think can help us, but we just don't know enough yet, unfortunately. So that is one of the things that you will see, if you follow my research studies, we're continuing to look at that and try to find some ways to kind of help. But right now we don't know that yet.
Judy asks, why is Tank P called Tank P? She thinks maybe she missed that part.
Oh, psychological, Judy. That's the psychological hunger.
All right. And I think there was something else up here. Well, somebody asked if there might be a podcast that would talk about this sort of thing.
Oh, yes. There are so many.
Good.
There are so many podcasts about intuitive eating. And so I know Christy Harrison, she's a very popular dietitian who talks about this, has written a book about this. The original, intuitive eating pros, I think Evelyn Tribble and Elise, I might be saying her name, but they've written a whole book. So there's so much. I literally just touched the surface, but because I think people are realizing the harm that has been done to many of us in our guidance to lose weight, and how intuitive eating has really been helpful to kind of restore people's relationship with food.
Delisha asks, in light of COVID and confinement of children for about a year, how would you recommend incorporating some of these elements for teens who gained a lot of weight between 2020 and 2021 without making them feel like they're on diets?
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to do that part. But I think it's modeling as the parent. That's the first thing. You got to model and show how you eat, and then to find a way. So it may be hard for them to talk to you about it as the parent, but to, think about how you engage with food in your home, and what that looks like. Are you, I think some of us might be concerned when we see our children, gaining weight, and it's hard, because you want to help them as best as you can. But sometimes our role, just might first model those relations. And if you model those healthy behaviors, and if you have a pathway to talk to your child, it's to normalize, and help them to see, wow, like there's a way of eating that can just, we make our decisions by eating physically, not emotionally. We make them based on what we're hearing, and honor their ability to decide, you provide the food, but you honor their ability to decide the amount and how, that they're going to eat. And that Ellen Satter, she has some great work on helping children kind of relearn their biological signals of hunger and satiety. And she, I think, kind of is really great. So I would recommend going to see her work. Ellen Satter, I think is her name. So I think she'd be really helpful.
Awesome. Well, we are just about right at time here. You've had a lot of wonderful compliments in the comments as well, Dr. Goode, because it was just really a terrific presentation, and everybody is agreeing. So
I'm glad I had such fun. It's good to be with you all.
It was a wonderful presentation. I'll tell you something that I did learn, and I want to wrap up with this for everybody remaining on the call. Some of the best science I think we know that we can rely on often comes from studies with volunteer participants. That's how we get it to the stage that it can be used by us. And I wanted to let all of you know that something you can do if you're interested, in addition to seeing if you are eligible for Dr. Goode's study, is to join the NRI participant pool. It's a secure, confidential database for people interested in being notified of future studies that take place not just at the Nutrition Research Institute, but also with our collaborators, partners on the North Carolina Research Campus in Kannapolis. So you can join it by going online, and I'm going to, let me see if I can just hit this and get it. There we go. I've just posted in the chat how you can find out more about it. There's a phone number, an email, and our location on our website. When you join the NRI participant pool, it doesn't commit you to participating in any way. If you join the pool, though, you'll always know when opportunities to participate arise. So we really encourage this if this is something that would interest you. And I think that's about it for us. We've gone over. So I just want to thank everybody for coming, and thank you for supporting us. And to remind you that we are a nonprofit research center, and we rely on a variety of sources of revenue. So if you're inclined to support our work, we welcome it. And you can visit us at uncnri.org/support. So thank you all. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Dr. Goode. Goodbye.